Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Media. I am NIK NIKAM from Houston, Texas. If you are new to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and you're eager to get the training lessons going, I have some good news for you. In this presentation, we're going to talk about all the different structures, functions, dials, monitors, and controls, so you have a much better understanding of what the instructor is trying to explain to you. So let's start with this training lesson here, and let's start with the basic controls, and then I will explain to you what we're going to do. Okay, let's start the lesson here. And as you can see, there are already structures named here, namely these are flaps, these are ailerons, and this is the rudder, and two panels are the elevators. So what we can do is we can just pause this here for a second once it gets loaded so it won't interrupt what we want to do. Then I'm going to go you through step by step what are all the structures in a Cessna 152 to begin with, and what are the dials, what do they mean, what do they reflect, and how you control those different parameters using a joystick like I have. This is called the Logitech Extreme 3D Pro joystick, which helps us to control all these various structures we are looking at here, not only outside but also inside. To begin with, let me start with my presentation with a slide with a PowerPoint. And this is structures, monitors, dials, levers, and functions. All right? Okay. As I already showed you, basically there are these different structures in various parts of the plane to enable the plane to fly, to turn, to rotate, and take off and land. These are called ailerons, which help the plane to turn to the left or the right side to start with. Rudder is the one which helps to navigate the plane while it is on the ground to move to the right or the left side. So this is the rudder function. To the left, this is to the right. And the ailerons which we are looking here is operated by this, the left movement to turn towards the left, and this is to the right movement. So those are the functions. Next we have these elevators. The elevators help us to lift the plane up or bring it down during landing and descending. And these are called flaps. These are flaps which helps us to lower the flaps to increase the lift while the plane is taking off, and also while landing to increase the drag so it slows down the plane. And these are all controlled by these various buttons, namely 7 and 8 or 9 and 10. And you can program all these things as you like to accomplish what you exactly want it to do. Let's get inside the cockpit of a Cessna 152 and look at various dials. Don't be overwhelmed with whatever you are seeing here, because we're going to be using just a few of the structures here to get started and get off the ground and get in the air. First of all, here we have the speedometer, which is the speed at which the air is flowing over the wings. So that's a different kind of speed compared to when we drive a car and say we are driving 80 miles. That's a different kind of number we are talking about. Here is the speed of air flowing over the plane wings. It can be anywhere from 0 to 140. It's called nautical miles. Here there is a red line here, and I'm going to explain a little more about this later on. Then this is the one which talks about altitude. How high is the plane from the ground level or from the sea level for that matter. And this is a navigation. It is telling you which direction the plane is going. Now it is showing that it is going in the direction of east. This is based on the magnetic field of the Earth, where the north is pointing towards 360 degrees. The north is 360 degrees, east is 90 degrees, south is 180 degrees, and west is 270 degrees. And the same numbers are actually used for the runways also. If the runway says 27, that means it is pointing towards west. On the other hand, if the runway says like 18, it is pointing towards the south. If it says 36, it's pointing towards the north. So that's an additional finding that you can keep track of. Here is another one. It is called the attitude. No, we are not talking about the attitude of a pilot or the instructor. Of course, who likes a cranky instructor anyway? This attitude tells how the plane is oriented to the ground level. If it's like this, oh, the plane is oriented to the left, or if it's like this, it's oriented to the right side. That is telling us how the plane is oriented. And if it is perfectly flat to the ground, then this will be horizontal. The blue color is the sky, the brown color is the ground, and this little dot is the plane, and this is the horizontal plane of the aeroplane. So this tells us how much turn you are doing, and this also tells you how many degrees you are moving while you are doing the turn. So it's very important to compare these two, because in bigger planes you can actually dial the number. If the air traffic controller says, please maintain the altitude 6,000 feet and head northwest 276. That means you're heading towards northwest 276 degrees, which actually you can dial in big planes. But here you have to manually do like this. So you're going towards left, you just turn it this way. So that's the part of that. The other thing that we are going to be concerned about would be, this is an important one, RPM. This tells us how fast the engine is running, that is revolutions per minute. It goes from like 300 to almost 2,500 rotation RPMs. When you get 2,500 RPMs, that means your maximum RPM, or the power. This is what you use when you take off, and that is accomplished by this, what is called the throttle. You push the throttle all the way into the dashboard, and then it is at the maximum speed. But you don't do that. You make sure you have your parking brake in locked position before you do that. Otherwise, it's just going to take off. And this is the mixture of air and the fuel. Depending upon the concentration of the fuel and the air determines how much thrust the throttle is able to generate. And this is the yoke. The yoke helps you to pull the plane up while taking off. And when you're taking off, you're holding this, and you can't hold this forever. So in order to make sure that the plane stays in that given particular level, you use this, what is known as the trim, T-R-I-M. The trim is very important because you cannot manually hold this forever. All right. Then let's talk about the, when you're, let me take this off for a second. Excuse me. So if you look here, there is the parking brake. Before you take off, you give the full throttle, and then you release the parking brake. Then the plane starts to race on the runway. But to keep the plane on the runway in a steady manner, you move this rudder to the left or the right on its vertical axis. So not bend, not this way, but just turn it. Turn it to the right or left so you stay on the midline on the runway. So that is accomplished by this rudder. And that's what this works here. And in the bottom, we have these pedals. They serve two purposes. Number one, they act like rudder when the plane is running on the runway. And they also act like brakes when the plane is landing and trying to slow down. So you learned that one. So we learned a lot of main functions in this one. So let us, and here is the radio control where you can talk to the control tower, or you can listen to the weather in the local area, and you can constantly keep in contact with the tower asking for directions as which way you're going, how many degrees you need to turn, what altitude you need to maintain in relationship to your destination, such as an airport. So these are some of the basic structures. Let's move on to the next one. And as I told you, the speedometer tells the speed at which the air is traveling over the wings. And this white area is the area which is safe for you to take off. You want to reach this particular speed, usually between 60 to 80 knots, joystick up, so the nose is lifted and the plane takes off. And here we have this white arc, which is 30 to 85. Then we have the green arc, which is the safe flying area as far as the speed is concerned. And yellow is conducted with caution only in smooth air, because if you have turbulence, you really don't want to get here because the plane is going to flip-flop and you don't want to get into the trouble. And the red line indicates never to go beyond that red line. So generally you want to stay in the green area. And this is the area close to the landing parameters. Now starting an engine, here are some simple steps. You have a mixture of more fuel and less air. Then you prime if you need. You do the prime, especially in the cold countries like New York or Boston. Anyway, the throttle is open like half an inch, which means you're given almost maximum throttle. Also, you have to make sure that the throttle is about 1000 RPMs while you're just getting ready to get on the runway, getting ready. Now, the next step is before we take off, there are a few things that we need to watch for. Make sure that the parking brake is set. The flight controls are free and correct. Fuel shut-off valve is on, and the mixture is rich below 3,000 feet. Elevator trim is off, and a few other things. You can just pause and look at these. The next thing is takeoff. So what are the things we need to focus when we are ready to take off? The wing flaps should be 10 degrees. They should be open 10 degrees down. I don't know if I showed you the flap button here. Okay. Right here, this white stuff is the flap. It has 10, 20, 30. So when you're taking off or when you're getting ready to land, you put that in 10 degree position. And as you get closer to landing, you go into 20. And as just before you're very close to the landing, you go to 30. It opens up the flap. All right, let's go forward. We talked about the fuel, full open, that means full throttle. And the elevator control, lift nose while when it's 50 knots or more, you lift the yoke, pull the yoke or just lift the joystick here, and climb speed should be 60 to 75. So just don't go pull it forever. You just have to pull the nose up enough to clear the ground and stay on the same course as the runway until you reach 1,000 feet, just holding this steady at a speed of 60 to 75 knots. All right, the next part is landing. Landing is more tricky compared to taking off. Again, your airspeed should be 60 to 70 knots. Wing flaps could be start off with 10, then 20 and 30 degrees. Airspeed should be slowed down by bringing the joystick down and applying the trim. Then first the main wheels should be touching the ground. The nose or the front wheel should be the last one to touch the ground after it has slowed down considerably. And use the brakes gently. Don't slam the brakes. And here is a little axis showing how all these various controls work. To lift the plane up, you work along its longitudinal axis. That is the longitudinal axis of the plane. This is the center of gravity for the plane. And you pull this one up or down. And this is the lateral axis or the right axis, and that's controlled by the left or the right movement of the joystick or the yoke. Then we have the vertical axis, which is controlled by this rudder, which I told you about. This vertical axis is controlled by the rudder. So these are all things which are controlled by the joystick. In addition, it has like 12 different buttons. We can also apply brakes here. We can control the camera. We can control the trim. We can control the flaps, all from this yoke. So ladies and gentlemen, this is a very quick overview of the structure, monitors, dials, levers and functions in a Cessna 152 to get started for beginners. I hope this has been useful to you. Another important thing that you can do is create a cheat sheet like this and put it on the monitor when you're flying, so it will help you. For example, mine is number 1 is as brake. I made this as brake. Then number 2 is the external camera. Then we have number 6 landing gear, which we don't use. Then this number 7 is for trim down. 8 is trim up. Then we have 9 is increase flaps, that is increase 10, 20, 30 degrees and decrease flap. So all these controls are here, and here's a little hat stick which we can move to the left, to the right, to the top or to the bottom to look at outside the plane in different directions. I hope this has been useful to you. Thank you so much. I would suggest you create cheat sheets like this for various controls, for takeoff, for landing and different operations until you become second nature. It's just like learning to drive when you are 16 years old. You obviously couldn't go straight when you are steering. But today, I'm sure as soon as you get in the car, you can reach 0 to 60 miles in 4 seconds with a straight line down the road. I think that's how it's going to take a while to get to where you want to go, but this will help you to get a much better understanding of training your mind. It involves training of your mind, your muscle, and your confidence. Thank you so much, and please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I will see you next time.